Welcome back to the AD 1926 video series. This episode is going to be fun. We're going to go on private property. Last time we left off here west of Hayburn on the so-called Tank Farm Loop. We're going to cross the later version of 66, continue on that same 1926 to 38 alignment on this private driveway, over a gate and onto the so-called Motor Court Loop, private property. Now, I ought to clarify, I did have permission to be on the property. A local gentleman told the property owner, the farmer, about my project and then introduced me to the farmer, and I told him what I'm doing with the Route 66 suite and everything. And he invited me onto his land, gave me the gate code and everything, and just let me explore. He told me that there was an earlier unpaved version of 66, and you see this in episode 34. But according to Ross 2022, this road was paved at the tail end of the Ozark Trail, meaning this unpaved road here, which we thought would have been the earlier 66, was actually the Ozark Trail. And I don't have westbound coverage of this little portion, so we're just using the eastbound played in reverse as if we're looking out the back window. So yeah, that older trail was off to the right there. I do have a complete and uninterrupted eastbound video, and that's under the Travel Buddy bonus content on Patreon. We're coming up on that locked gate, so that's as far as one can go. So you can at least see this other bit on D3743 road. Coming up on the right is an old 1920s or 30s gas station that's been converted into a home. Only the bottom floor and the far left part was the actual station. And that's next door to these cabins from the 1920s. Turns out they're not called Wild Horse Prairie cabins, those are further down the road. In episode 14, we took you in those cabins. Check that out from October 11th, 2021. But because this is AD 1926, we're going to revisit them. Notice the room has a fireplace, not much else. We noticed none of the rooms had any plumbing, except for these two small rooms at the very end, so it's safe to assume that these two were shared bathrooms. Each room had a garage to the left of it. Being here was very helpful for imagining travel in 1926. You had your garage, a small room, and a fireplace, and a shared bathroom. We're coming up on a familiar scene on the old 66. It's where grass and bushes are kind of coming onto the road narrows, and you've got trees hanging over as if you're going through a tunnel. I find this very inspiring for the Among the Trees movement, so that's really what that one is about as it relates to the road. After joining the later alignment of 66 for a bit, we get back on original 66, aka 181st Street, aka 770 Road. We're coming up onto an area once known as Bellevue, and I did notice some people still refer to this area as Bellevue. Notice the original road here curves off to the left. It's gated off private property. But this corner, this wasn't really Bellevue, even though the maps of the time show that. If we look at this map from 1916, Bellevue was way up over here. So I decided to check that out, the original site, really nothing left. And what's interesting, I found a book from 1925 that mentions the Bellevue post office being 9 miles northwest of Bristow. In this spot, it's about 5 miles north of Bristow. So that means when Route 66 came through here in 1926, Bellevue was still northwest of this curve. And there isn't any indication that there really was much around this curve. So what we probably have here is the place name labeled here at the curve because of the highway, but likely this was never really the center of town. I can't get over how narrow some of the alignments of Route 66 are in places. Okay, I get it. The 1926 road is usually very, very narrow, not even paved. But this portion here apparently was in use until the 1960s as Route 66. It just seems way too narrow for the 1950s and 60s, but apparently that's how it was. As you can see, the road is closed up ahead, so we're going to have to detour around and continue along the other side, still Route 66, 353rd Avenue. A road closed sign, a familiar sight along Old 66. We'll continue over here on McDonald Drive, and we are at the edge of Bristow, Oklahoma. Next episode, we'll start here in Bristow and continue west. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe at patreon.com/Route66Suite. There are over 100 videos showing places inspiring the music of the Route 66 Suite.